happens. Now, I'm going to read an older post that I found, and I'm not going to say the name, but it starts off like this. I shouldn't be a part of this group anymore. On October 24th, 2020, my husband died from suicide. His children were not allowed to attend the funeral, but we are keeping these beautiful souls in our prayers and saving every memory, every picture, every text for when they are old enough and can be reached. I watched him fight such a long, hard battle for his baby girls, and losing his identity from losing them. Now, that's heartbreaking to say at just the minimum. Now, I think the number that people truly don't understand is that it's it's between 1 to 6 people, men, will either commit suicide or just die from issues within the child custody system. Now, I'm kind of on the other end of this when I talk about this. When I read this story, it touched me. It really did, because it drew parallels from what I went through. Now, me being the father, of course, I'm going to give you the piece that how things happen. Now, my oldest son, named Reginald, he's my junior, my namesake. He passed away on February 6th, 2023. Now, you would think, okay, well, he's 25 years old, so he wasn't a child. No, by the time me and his mother got divorced, there was only one minor child, and that's my youngest son, whom is still alive. Now, for me, it's hard. And the reason why I say it's hard, because it's devastating when you lose a child. And it's even more devastating when the child you lost, you have been alienated from since November 19th, 2019. Now, for me, it's been a hard road, and even harder for my new wife, Julia, because when it came time to, when I felt it, that it was a time to meet my children, Julia had the opportunity to meet my youngest son, and we had great times, and we were going to baseball games and going to arcades and whatever you would do. I actually waited a little while before I introduced her to Darius, because I wanted him to meet somebody one time and know that I was serious in my intent. Now, you have to understand, this is right at the beginning of COVID in late 2018, early 2019. Now, I wasn't the custodial parent. Now, and for folks that don't understand, the custodial parent, you have the custodial parent, obviously the one where the child lives at. And depending on your court order or whatever you have set up with the courts, you will have your visitation schedule. You will have whatever's mandated by the court. You can have 50-50. It could be whatever it may be. But for men and women that are going through this process, the best advice I can give you is, when it comes down to it in that battle at post-divorce or going through a custody battle, try to be the custodial parent. And usually the one who files the paperwork will be the one they will assign initially. So that's the position you want to be in. Why? Because 9 times out of 10, the custodial parent has final say. Like, is the non-custodial parent, you can say, well, I think our child should go to X school. And she's like, well, I think our child should go to Y school. And then And unfortunately, that means the custodial parent has the tiebreaker. So really the custodial parent has 2 votes. So then whatever the custodial parent wants to do, that's what happens. You can only provide input. I learned that lesson. Well, I got into a new relationship, found a wonderful woman, and started to just build a new life. You know, divorce has been finalized, and you slowly start to creep back into the dating world. And I dated Julia for a few months, and I felt that it was only proper and respectful to not introduce my youngest son to her just yet. Now, in regards to my oldest son, Reginald, who passed away, him and Julia they never met. Ironically, neither has Julia and my ex-wife ever met, ever been in the same room, ever had a conversation. If you kind of get that, you know where there's a bad piece at. So, going through COVID, and you do whatever you can. You would think that, you know, you have your agreement set forth and what you're supposed to do and outlined and yada, yada, yada. It should just go that way. Well, COVID, if you didn't know, made things difficult for everyone. Yes, but it made things even more difficult from the child support, child welfare system, period. We were pretty much so hands-off, non-touch. We didn't know how to deal with people. We didn't know what was going on. So there was requests that you would make to the courts, and normally you would hear that you would have a date within maybe a week or 2 or whatnot. Or sometimes if you could go down to the courts in person, they'll give you a date. Well, COVID changed all that. Everything got delayed by weeks and months. And the hard thing for me was, at that time, my son was getting close to 16 and obviously getting closer to high school graduation. So I'm fighting through COVID, and we're dealing with our relationship as father and son for the time, you know, for the situation we were in. It was COVID. I understand it's difficult. What made things even more difficult is I was still having issues trying to see my son. I took some great advice from friends of mine, and they said, well, you need to check on your son. So go up to his school and visit his school and pull him out. You're his parent. You can, and just have a conversation with him. So I did. Went up to Hamilton High School in Chandler, Arizona. I went ahead and I had my now wife, Julia, with me. Well, we were fiance Julia with me. And what I did, so there wasn't any issue, because my son is high functioning autistic, sharp, brilliant minded kid. Should be a chef right now, but neither here or there. So I went ahead and pulled him out, but I pulled him out and I brought him into a conference room. In that conference room was his IEP, one of his IEP program coordinators, myself and Julia and Darius. So we had that conversation and we were talking. I was just trying to check up on him because I haven't been able to see him. I just wanted to give him a hug and, you know, tell him things are okay. But I could tell visibly he was shaken. He was just he was confused, like, why are you here? Of course, any kid would be like that if their parent shows up and you get pulled into a conference room. I'm aware of that. But I knew that there was going to be some chance that he was going to go back and tell his mother. Of course, you know, I'm not mad about that, because his actions didn't merit the reaction from his mother. In another attempt to try to hurt and separate me from my child, she went ahead and she took the option. She took the option to pull my son out of high school and said that she was going to homeschool him. Now, let's keep in mind that my ex-wife, who, if you ever had the I guess, dubious pleasure of crossing paths with, she will constantly tell you she has 5 degrees. 5 degrees. 5 degrees. I said 3 times. I'm not going to say it 5 times. But yes, everything from associates to a PhD. She's been a caterer. She's been in education, and now she has a doctorate in education. You would think that someone who would have a doctorate in education choosing to homeschool their child while they are now working from home should place the child in the best situation possible. Well, that wasn't the case, because my son's grades still suffered. And I know this because I stayed very active with the school. I stayed up to date on all correspondence from the school. I made sure to do that because I found out that I was taken off the blue card. And by the blue card, it means the card, the informational card for the school. And it was putting the X now as the first point of contact. Don't call dad. There's no need to. Well, I got involved in that process quick, fast, in a hurry, and I made sure that all correspondence came in duplicate with me carbon copied on it, because I wanted to continue to stay in my son's life, because at that point, I was never out of his life. Every day that he has been around, his father was there. Every milestone, every trip, every whatever, I was there. But thanks to COVID and delays in the system, it just messed things up even further. And then when time came for parent visits, for me to have my visitation time with him, it became even more strained. I would come up to the house, at the designated time to pick him up, and he did it a couple times, but then it stopped. And I'm like, okay, where's my son? He doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to go. I'm like, well, let me hear that from him. Never did. Until I did a series of welfare checks where I involved the Chandler Police Department to go to my ex's house and do a welfare check. And so they did a few, I think 3. And on the 3rd welfare check, he stated that he no longer wanted to have a relationship with his father. At that point, the police officer told me he's now 16 years old and he can have that right. So I would have to use the courts to be able to bring this situation back in balance. And again, he's 16, moving through high school and during COVID. So it's just chaos, pure chaos. And as much as I tried, there was always obstacles placed in my way. I fought so many things. For me, one of the hardest things I had to fight was my ex thought it would be a good idea to get control of the situation by going to court and fabricating abuse claims and fabricating that I was mentally, emotionally abusive and sexually abusive and just the whole 9. So I went to the courts and had to deal with that. And it was crazy because I first heard about this when they came to my job. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And I got an email because I wasn't in the office at the time. So I had an email saying there was law enforcement downstairs that wanted to talk to you. Please get in contact with them. Well, I had no contact information. So I said, well, they probably just either call me or whatever might be the case. So I just go ahead and just move on with my day. And then the weekend came around. It was a Saturday. I get a knock on the door. And this is at my place. And I'm not living with the ex. Moved out, have my own place. So what ends up happening is I get a knock on the door. I see 3 police officers from Chandler PD. They are sitting there in what we would call a shooting formation, where you have the lead officer a little bit to the left of me. Then you have a secondary officer to the right of me, and then you have the third officer in the very back in between. And if anything happens, that means that all three officers have a clear line of sight that an officer would not be involved in a shooting, only the intended perpetrator. That was supposed to be me. But I had absolutely no fight in me. I was more confused and trying to wonder what the hell was going on. They told me that there is an order of protection that's been placed on you by your ex. She says that she lives in the home and you have firearms and she feels that her life is in danger. So we're going to need you to vacate the premises. Well, I'm like, she don't live here. She don't live here. I pointed and I said, she lives not too far that way. And luckily the lead officer knew my situation because I've talked to him a few times and he was like, yeah, that's correct. She doesn't live here. But he said the order's still enforced. We'll let you remain in the household because she obviously doesn't live here, but you need to go to the courts and quash it. Okay. So I did. I went down to the courts thinking that, I could see a judge immediately and everything else is going to be good. Nope, it didn't happen that way. I got a court date where I was supposed to reappear. I was supposed to appear at court and I can deal with the situation moving forward. Well, look at it like this, because it even created more hell and havoc because, and I know this was intentional, by having this start at my job, it got my employer involved in this. And the last thing the employer wants to do is have to be in the middle of this situation. So I spoke to my director and I explained everything that's going on. And I was basically told if this order of protection goes enforced, the unfortunate consequence of it would be that we would terminate your employment. And that scared the hell out of me. I guess that would scare the hell out of anybody. Like, whoa, because this wasn't just, a nilly-willy job. I'm in the IT industry. And with this company I was with, I had a pension and I had everything else and time invested and whatnot. I didn't want that to happen. So court date comes around in front of the Judge Susan G. White, and we go through everything that was in the order of protection. There was claims of she was beaten over 20 years and the whole nine. The judge inquired about the abuse. She wanted to see police records of information, records of request, anything showing that there was an issue. Exactly. There was none to be found. She used stories. She actually fabricated things with her friend and sorority sister where she wrote a statement up saying and detailing everything, which was really a huge betrayal to me because, we were all at one time really good friends and even their children was raised around my sons because she was a single parent. So talk about that being kind of a stab in the back, kind of betrayal. But at that point, I couldn't believe it because the letter said she was abused and he's crazy. He's off his meds. He's psychotic. He's going to go to any lengths to hurt her and this, that, and other. And I would say in the brilliance of Susan G. White, the question was, okay, he's off what meds? That was the question. What meds? Well, of course, they didn't know that. They don't have my Walgreens pharmacy history. And then in the end of the written statement, it said, I have not seen him in little over a year. So how do you give a recent statement of events if you haven't seen the person? Exactly. I proved that I had my own residence. I proved that I chose to not communicate with the ex by cell phone. I had her number blocked. I brought the phone records in. I brought my lease and rental receipts, everything. And that's a note. Men, if you ever have to go to court, have your information together. I cannot stress that enough. But after putting all that information together, the case was dismissed. It was dismissed in my favor with no merit, no grant. So you would think, oh, that's a huge victory and you should feel just just elated to know that you got past that one. That was only the beginning, my friend. Only the beginning. So what ended up happening was the judge dismisses the case. And then at that point, the ex decides to scream out, so what do I need to do to make an order of protection stick to him? And by him, me. The judge at that point told her to get out. Get out of my courtroom. Judge White looked at me and she said, Mr. Jackson, please remain seated. We're going to give your ex about 10-ish minutes or so to leave the courtroom, to return to her vehicle, and to leave. Now, I mean, I guess that's standard protocol, but to me, it was kind of an insult. I'm like, you just cleared me of not wanting to harm this woman in any shape, form, or fashion, but I can't even walk out the courtroom. You know, I had no want, no need to abuse her. None. But I wasn't the jaded person who wanted to be destruction in any way she can be. So, okay. Dismissed. I'm out. I think everything's good. That only further enraged her and made the situation even more volatile. And that's what led to the alienation. And that's what led to one November. And one day in November, it was November 19th, 2019. I was lucky enough to get both of my sons together. My oldest son was back from college. He went to University of North Dakota. And he was home and Darius was home. And I said, hey guys, where you want to go? And they were like, let's go bowling. So we went down to Chandler Lanes on Arizona Avenue and we went bowling. Had a great time. Talk crap, cussed a little bit, whatever. Had it, to me, good father and son time. And then I was lucky enough to take a selfie of us together, not knowing that was going to be the last picture that I was going to take with both of my sons alive. Yeah. So much more to talk about. And that story that I read in the father's group just hit home to me. And my heart goes out to the family that the father was so just overcome with grief and sadness and depression that he ultimately took his life because he couldn't cope any further. Now, I even have to identify with that. I attempted suicide. Not proud of it. And I failed, obviously, because I'm talking to you. And I end up calling the 988 number. And funny enough, for them being the suicide prevention line, they were some of the, they weren't friendly. But I guess their job is to make sure that you're in a good, safe space when they get you off the phone. Either way, I know what it is to fail doing that. And thank God I did fail at doing that, because there was a lot of things that needed to be done. I wish that was the end of the fight. Then you have to move up 2019 and 20 and 21 and 22 and 23 until February. Then my oldest son passed away at Gilbert Medical Center. And the sad part about it is, it wasn't like it was anything tragic. I mean, like it was like a car accident or anything immediate. I found out afterwards, after reading over 2,000 pages of medical records, that he has been in and out of the hospital. He was in ICU a few times. I found out he had a stroke. He lost vision in one eye, and he's been sick for the longest. And they did. And when I say they, I mean my ex, her friends, her family, her sorority sisters did everything in their power to make sure I didn't know. And you would be like, wait, why don't you not text them? Why don't you not call them? Oh, I got logs as long as apartment buildings of phone calls and text messages and reach out to me, and there's no issues. Please talk to me. I'm here. I took videos and everything. Even with COVID, I took videos and I sent it to them because I couldn't see them. There were some light responses, but I felt like towards the end of things that their mother might have started texting for my youngest, because I didn't really hear much of anything from my oldest. I didn't know he was going through all of that. And they did such an amazing job of being so evil. They hid all that. And that hurt me. But to know that he was this sick, and keep in mind, my son was going to University of North Dakota. He was already a licensed pilot. I jokingly say that he can fly a plane better than he can drive. And that was true. But I don't know. I mean, at this point, to be able to have to digest that, to have a friend of their family calls me and says, "Hey, you need to come down to the hospital." I'm like, "Well, I'm in California, and it's Reginald. It's Reggie. It's bad. Call now." So I called because I was told Chandler Regional, and I called there, and they're like, "No, he's not there. He's at Gilbert. Let me transfer you through." So I finally navigate through the operator for Gilbert Medical Center, and I get up to the ICU, and I speak to a male nurse, and I said, "Hi, my name is Reginald Jackson Sr. My son, Reginald Jackson Jr. is he's in your care, and I was just trying to get an update." The nurse was like, "Okay, well, let me just go ahead and patch you into the room and you can speak to the family." And I was like, "No, I do not want to speak to the family. I just want to know how he's doing." And he's like, "Okay, please hold." So I hold, and it's probably the longest few seconds I've ever felt in my life. The phone picks up, and all I hear is screaming and crying. And I hear my ex screaming and crying and said, "Our baby is gone. He's dead." And so I just had to pull together whatever I had. And I thank God for this, because there were so many negative and nasty things I could have said, but I didn't. God basically guided my words, and I told the ex, and I know she's on speakerphone, so I know her family heard this. I said, "This is on you. You did this. This did not need to happen. This did not need to happen. Our child truly is gone, and nothing can bring him back. And I just have to know that my journey with him ended on February 6th, 2023. And I wish I would say that was the end of that chapter and we're healing and things are going good. I can't say that. Still alienated. There was a horrible mess with the funeral. We actually, myself and Julia, we paid for our own viewing of Reginald, because just to avoid the drama. We were getting like little low-key threats and everything else. So we just thought the best thing to do was just have our own personal viewing and deal with things that way. The only thing that they were interested in me and from my wife is money. I got a message from the cousin, "Hey, we're collecting money for the funeral. Hit me up on my Cash App." And I'm like, hell no. Any money that was raised by myself, my wife, and my friends, I made sure that they gave it directly to the funeral home. And there was no way I was going to have to deal with folks who didn't even want to tell me my son was dying. And I'm going to give them money. No way in hell. I'm still hurting. We're still hurting. We're still trying to find answers, because this story has so many bad twists and turns. But understand this, and really in closing for this piece, that yes, there are fathers who are killing themselves, committing suicide, because they have been alienated from their families for so long that they can't go on, or they affect their new life because of their previous life is unresolved. My heart goes out to the family for my father's group, and I hope his children one day get a chance to truly know how good of a person their father was. I wish them peace, and I wish all those that are listening happiness, trying to rebuild and understand how things are supposed to move on in life. And I just hope that that we can put these pieces together and just start to heal and not continuously hurt. I'd like to thank you for taking this time to listen to the Basic Black Podcast. My name is Reginald. I hope that you tune back into these stories. I know it's not fun hip-hop radio, but it's true life. And you might know somebody who are going through things like this. So if you're not part of a father's group or whatnot, and you have a story or if you have questions, please feel free to send an email to basicblackpodcast@gmail.com. All one word, basicblackpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening. Have a good one. Goodbye.